What happens to story when you enter a post-Christian world? I wondered about that a lot. I'm not sure how to think about what happens to story. Like, what actually then allows you to say something meaningful about reality that an audience is going to resonate with when you no longer have a meta narrative that is shaping the culture, shaping the way that people perceive truth. And this is kind of what's bizarre about the nature of reality, and that is the first thing you encounter is a story that creates sort of the framework for meaning. And that's what happens in the Bible. This is why we always start the story form life with Genesis 1. And this is why I'm so fascinated by the fact that the Bible begins in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It starts like it's a story. In the beginning, let me start, once upon a time. Like it gives you this story framework. And it doesn't start by making a bunch of statements about truth, like God exists, sin is evil. It's not like that. It doesn't sort of start with teaching. It just sort of tells you a story about how the earth was created and then what
Yeah.
happens to humanity. So yeah, what do you think might happen to story in a post-Christian context? Have you encountered anything in your reading of stories that kind of has given you kind of inklings about what that is? Or do you think that's even possible?
Well, if our society becomes confused about what truth is, then that will reflect in our stories and how confused they seem. Like
Yeah.
the Snow White movie that just came out, I just watched a video breaking it down. I didn't watch it myself because I have no desire to, but he was talking about how terrible it was. And I feel like the evolution of that story, how it started out in 1937 is one thing, and then they just made a new version in our new post-Christian world of the same story supposedly. It's just so bad. Anyone who sees it will feel that. Like, it's so robbed of any kind of gratification. There's no payoff for anything. It doesn't make sense. Like there's so many things that's like, what why doesn't it make sense? There's something about this that just does not resonate. And I think part of it is because Snow White, a damsel in distress story, and damsel in distress stories reflect something that's true, which is that women love being saved and we want a man to use any effort possible to come and save us. And men like doing that in turn. So there is that truth about damsel in distress stories, for example. And so when our present society looks at that and says, no, actually, women are stronger than that and they can save themselves, let's make a different story. Let's take an old damsel in distress story and completely change it so that the woman is the one doing the saving. The prince is hardly a part of the story. You just get such a lifeless lump of cinema that can hardly even be called cinema. And, like, why is that? It's because it's just not true. It does not reflect truth. It doesn't feel like truth. It doesn't invigorate anyone. Like, when I watch Snow White and Sleeping Beauty is another one that I love, that's a damsel in distress story. When I watch those, I just feel so much. Like, it's so exciting and, like, you can I love to watch the princess get saved and the prince fight for her. Like, that is so there's something so invigorating about that. Um, so when that is completely ripped down,
You-
when you try to replace it with something that people wish was true, or just they want it to be true, they wanna convince you it's true, it's not convincing. It doesn't speak to me.
mm,
It's my soul isn't attracted to that.
right.
So, yeah, I think it's just so everyone is confused and everyone wants to push a new narrative that doesn't reflect what we believe is true or like
Yeah.
what our souls believe is true. They
Right.
just want to construct one of their own creation.
Yeah. That's interesting. Stories are inherently philosophical, they're inherently political, they're inherently theological. And because they are reflecting truths, when you're constructing a story, one of the things you can do is test whether or not you are under the spell of a deception or a lie by whether or not a story based on those ideas holds together. And
Mm.
oftentimes these stories, they don't hold together. And then all of a sudden somebody comes out with a story that just everyone just feels in their gut is just a good story. It's beautiful. That's why I think it's
Yeah.
so oftentimes it's, the beautiful that causes us to have the most sort of instinctual awareness of what's true and where the truth lies. If you want children to know the truth, tell them the truth. If you want children to love the truth, tell them a story.